Among Friends by Katy Haye. The girl was covered in blood. Most of it probably wasn't her own, since she'd managed to make it to Gryff's house, and that wasn't exactly close to anywhere. Some of it probably was her own, though, since she'd half knocked and half simply fallen against his door. Gryff put a hand out to catch her as the girl opened wide eyes, said, "Please," and fell into a dead faint. Carrying the kid inside, Gryff found she was cold, her pale skin clammy when he set her down beside the fire. Gryff chafed at her hands, noting the ring of abused skin around her wrists. Twisting the comfy chair to face the fire and stirring the wood to stoke it hotter, he filled the kettle and set it to heat over the flames. Micawber crawled gently, landing on the arm of the chair, beady eyes peering at the girl. "You keep an eye on her," Gryff directed. The raven crawled soft agreement. Gryff fetched clothes, his own cast-offs, so they'd be woefully huge on the thin child, who couldn't be more than 12, along with some rags to clean off the blood, and the cosiest blanket he possessed from the bed in the corner. He didn't undress the girl because she might not like that, but pushed up her sleeves and shifted her collar side to side so he could clean the blood from her skin. She had a bloody nose, a bruise under one eye, and the damage to her wrists that said she'd been bound. Gryff fetched ointment and smeared it over her wounds. The girl sighed and shifted, but didn't wake. Gryff hoped that was a sign she felt safe. Perhaps she simply couldn't bear to wake and remember what had happened. Whatever that was. His jaw tightened. Micawber ruffled her feathers, snaring his attention. "Yes, you're right. We need more information. And our friends need to know where she is." Gryff opened the window and Micawber launched herself out, becoming a dot of black against the morning sky in the space of a few heartbeats. Gryff pulled the warm blanket over the girl, made a cup of tea with the last of the hot water, and settled cross-legged with a book to pass the time until his visitor woke up. The fire burned down, and Gryff built it back up. A tap at the window signalled Micawber's return. Gryff let her in, holding a quiet conversation to understand the news across the forest. A gasp split the air. The girl was sitting up, eyes wide, turning to him as he faced her. "Where am I?" Gryff swallowed. "Is your name Keller?" he asked softly. She nodded and swallowed harder than he'd done. How do you know my name?" "May I hold your hand, Keller?" She nodded, swallowing again. Her hand was swamped in his larger one. Her wrists looked better already. Gryff knew he was delaying. "I'm afraid I have some bad news. There was an accident." "Accident?" "At your home." Keller's eyes had grown wider still. He covered her small hand with his. "What do you remember?" Keller's other hand touched her face, where the bruise was now barely noticeable. "Soldiers came." She looked at Gryff with a plea in her eyes. "I thought it was a dream, a nightmare." It was real. "Mama and Pa?" The pleading grew stronger. Gryff wished beyond everything that he could give her what she wanted. "I'm so sorry, Keller. Your parents are dead." Her lips trembled. Her eyes welled up. She folded in on herself and Gryff wrapped her in his embrace as her shoulders shook with sobs. "Shh. I'm glad you got away, Keller. I'm glad you're here. I'll keep you safe." She wept for 10 minutes, soaking Gryff's shirt. He wiped away a few tears of his own while holding her. Micawber ruffled her feathers and pecked gently at Keller's hair. Finally, the girl's sobs became sniffles and settled into silence. Gryff continued to hold her, rocking back and forth. She took a deep breath and pulled away. "Can I go back? They need—" She took a breath, blinking hard. "They need to be buried." "Your friends have taken care of that. You can go and say a prayer when it's safe." "Safe?" Gryff nodded. "You ran away from the soldiers, didn't you?" She nodded. "They'll be hunting you." He threw up a hand. "You'll be safe here, I promise, but we need to be careful." She nodded, the expression in her eyes more grown-up than a child should ever be. "Will I have to hide?" "Maybe for a short while. How about a disguise?" "A disguise?" He swallowed again, wishing he didn't have to suggest it. "They're looking for a girl. If we cut your hair and dress you in my old clothes, you could pass for a boy." She touched her hair. Gryff couldn't hope to interpret the feelings that flitted across her face before they were replaced by resolve. "Very well. Cut it off." Gryff fetched scissors from the kitchen. "I'll try to keep the ends straight." She gave a wan smile in response to that. She sat cross-legged on the floor. Her hair had once been in 2 plaits. Gryff supposed Mama had probably helped with them. Now the girl's hair was a tangled mess, sticking out in all directions, daubed with mud and leaves. Gryff combed it, then tugged it into sections small enough for the scissors to cut through. The air was filled with the snick of the blades and the occasional caw from Micawber, watching with her head tilted. Gryff threw the strands into the fire so there'd be no evidence of Keller's change. He tidied it up as much as he could, then set the scissors down. "There, how does it feel?" "My neck is cold." Keller stroked a hand around suddenly bare skin at her nape. "I'll fetch some wood while you change into new clothes." He indicated his leftovers beside her seat. Micawber left with him, perching on his shoulder as he ducked around the corner and gathered an armful of logs from the sheltered store. As he turned back to the house, he noticed several crows settling into the trees that overlooked the house, black wings flapping as they found a branch and called greetings to the birds already there. Gryff nodded a welcome. He knocked, then slipped back inside, focusing on placing the logs beside the fire before he turned to Keller. She'd rolled up the sleeves of his shirt and the cuffs of his trousers. They still swamped her, but he was pleased how different she looked in his cast-offs. "If anyone asks, your name is Will, and I'm Uncle Gryff." "Will and Gryff," she said quietly. "I understand." They both jumped as thunderous knocking sounded at the door. Gryff held up a finger and met Keller's frightened gaze. "Leave the talking to me. You're Will, remember? Uncle Gryff will take care of everything." Her eyes stayed wide, but she nodded. Gryff threw the door open, unsurprised to find a block of soldiers filling the path outside. "What?" He kept a hand on the door handle. Micawber landed on his shoulder. The soldier facing him flinched as she tilted her head and crawled loudly in his face. "We're searching for a fugitive. They escaped 6 armed soldiers." Gryff let his eyebrows climb up his forehead. "Truly, that's alarming to hear. Thanks for the warning. I'll be sure to lock my door." He made to close the door, but the soldier put his heavy boot in the way and leaned a shoulder against the wood. "We need to search your property." "Why?" "They could be hidden inside." Gryff didn't move, holding eye contact with the soldier. "I think I'd have noticed if a dangerous fugitive broke into my home." The soldier didn't even crack a smile. He stood taller, peering over Gryff's shoulder. "Who's that? Harbouring a fugitive is a serious matter." Gryff held his ground. "That's my nephew. He's not a fugitive." "It's a girl of 12 who's escaped." "A girl? A child? I thought you said it was a dangerous fugitive." "She is a fugitive. Her family defied the king." "Well, Will here is 13, and I wouldn't describe him as dangerous, especially not against armed soldiers." "What about that bruise?" Gryff's heart pounded, but he simply glanced back dismissively. "Fell out of a tree. A danger to himself, if anyone." Cawing sounded outside, more crows gathering in the trees opposite the door, witnesses to the confrontation. Gryff scanned the group of soldiers, then locked eyes with someone he knew. "How's your mother, Aidan? Back on her feet?" The soldier mumbled something. "Tell her I sent my regards," Gryff called clearly. "If she needs any more healing, I'm happy to help." He didn't want her to fall and break another leg. He just wanted the soldiers to remember that ordinary people weren't their enemies. The soldier standing in his doorway chewed his lip. He looked back at Aidan. "You vouch for this man?" "Aye, Captain." "We're done here." The captain stepped back, stomping along the path while the soldiers drew back to make room. Aidan threw him an apologetic glance before falling in with his fellows. Gryff kept the door open until they vanished between the trees, their path marked by the caws of the crows in the branches overhead. Keller plucked at his elbow. "Will they stay away?" "No reason to come back here," Gryff answered. He closed the door then, escorting Keller back to her chair. "I'll get us something to eat." He heated soup and cut up the last of the previous day's bread. More cawing sounded outside as they ate. Gryff opened the window, and Micawber flew out to be with her friends. When they'd finished, Gryff put the pots in the sink, then crouched in front of Keller. "Can you tell my friends what happened? They need to know what's going on." Her eyes widened, but she nodded, more determined than any 12-year-old should ever need to be. "Thank you." She'd agreed, but the girl shrank behind Gryff when they stepped outside to find a throng of people waiting. Gryff only recognised about half of them. The others must have come from further afield than the local villages. And they'd come at speed. He put an arm around Keller to reassure her. "Keller, you're safe!" His gaze darted up, finding a slender man with greying hair hurrying through the crowd. "Uncle!" Keller's face lit up. The slim man knelt and pulled her into a hug. "I'm so relieved to find you here. We feared the soldiers had got you." Keller was sobbing too hard to speak, but her head turned back and forth against her uncle's chest. "Mama," she managed. "Pa?" Her uncle stroked her hair, his voice strained. "They're in heaven now, watching over you." He looked up. "We have to do something. The King's Guard is getting out of control." A susurration of agreement passed through the crowd, while the crows cawed in unison. Keller pulled back. "No, you can't fight the King's soldiers. They have swords and knives. They'll kill you." Gryff faced her, his expression earnest. "Fighting doesn't have to mean weapons and fisticuffs. We know we can't beat the king with force, but there are other ways to fight. We'll spread your story, and ordinary people across the kingdom can stop the king without so much as throwing a punch." Keller glanced around. Gryff tightened his grip on her shoulder reassuringly. Someone in the crowd stepped forward. "Charcoal for heating comes from the forest. The king's fine palace will be cold if we stop it leaving here." Another figure spoke up. "Goods from elsewhere in the kingdom pass through us. They'll find it difficult to reach the capital if the fords are flooded and the roads lead in a circle." Keller glanced at her uncle, then back to Gryff. They both nodded reassuringly. "We all have a part to play. Yours is to tell people what happened. Can you do that?" Keller bit her lip, then straightened her shoulders and nodded. "I'll play my part." Applause broke out from the crowd. First a ripple, then a tumult. Keller blinked in surprise. Gryff smiled at her, then caught her uncle's eye and nodded. The two of them would take care of Keller. Everyone would, and they'd do everything in their power to make the king and his soldiers regret the violence they'd visited on her family. That was Among Friends by Katy Haye. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe if you want to be notified when a new video is posted up.